Hey everyone, this is Kevin Rabichow, and I'm going to give you a tutorial and overview of the features of Ruse AI. Hopefully this helps you get acquainted with the study tool, and if it's your first time using it, introduces you to some of the features that you may not have known about previously. So the interface for Ruse AI is going to look a lot like any browser-based study tool that you may have used before. And the first thing to know is that when you click on study, you're going to be sent to this page, and the spot that you are viewing will be selected in the top left corner here. So in the top left, I have the option to choose a default tree, a custom tree, or to edit the one that I've already loaded. I'll show you quickly what both of those are. First, if you load a default tree, you'll be loading the preflop solution that we have uploaded from off the platform. So these are not solved by Ruse. These are imported preflop trees because Ruse at the moment does not solve multi-way preflop scenarios. They only solve heads-up preflop scenarios. I'll show you that in a little bit. But for now, if you were an MTT player and you wanted to study a post-flop MTT scenario, you would start by choosing your preflop scenario. So let's say you were interested in a button versus big blind single raise pot. You would choose the positions, then the preflop action, and then the stack size. Let's look at 40 big blinds. So I'll confirm that. And now, if you go back to that same menu and edit, you'll see the tree that you've just populated. The settings that you're loading are pot size, stack size, preflop ranges, which have loaded by default, and the bet sizing. In the bet sizing area, I'll show you the first feature that we're excited about, which is dynamic bet sizing. I use this on all of my trees. And if you hover here on the question mark, you can see the description. Dynamic bet sizing is an automatically determined system that chooses the optimal bet size for the scenario you are looking at. So if I switch over to this and I'm going to apply those settings to all streets, I also like to always add all in. I'll show you what that means in a second. But just to make sure, turn is now dynamic, river is now dynamic. Great. So with that, I could save this as a custom tree if I wanted to in the bottom left corner here, or I could just confirm and move on by choosing a flop. So whatever flop I choose, you can see the description on the top left. You have the SPR and the positions and the street that you're starting from. So this is now a custom tree that you've been working on because I changed the sizing. And when you load a default tree again from here, it's going to go back to the default settings. So what you'll see here, this is what we call the action history. You'll see the familiar navigation system that you might use in other programs. So if I want to move, and I'm just going to click on strategy plus EV so that you can see a little more information here. If you want to move through the betting line, you can select the actions as they happen. So if you want the big blind to check, now you're looking at the buttons, strategy, and position. And you'll notice that only one bet size was chosen, and also all in is here. So just to clarify what happened, the dynamic bet sizing engine chose 40% pot as the best single bet size to use in this scenario. Now, let's say you want more bet sizes, you can have 2. If I edit this tree again and go back to those sizing settings, you'll see here that I could choose to have 2 different bet sizes. If I increase to 2, this is currently the maximum, although we will have more in the future. If we increase to 2 and click confirm and just choose that same flop again, we're going to see a new strategy generated. And this is where you can see how fast Ruse processes new solutions. This new spot has now been created from scratch. This is an AI engine creating a fresh solution. This is not a lookup tool. And this new solution has 2 bet sizes. You see now 40% is not the sizing it's choosing. Now that it knows it has the flexibility to use 2 bet sizes, it's chosen 25% and 69%, which I assume is the geometric 3-street size to get all in for this stack depth. So at any point, you can navigate through, and what's happening is that all of the bet sizes are being populated. The bet and raise sizes are being populated by Ruse's recommendation. So the thing that we like about this is that you're seeing a simplified strategy that does not lose you EV, or at least it loses you the absolute minimum amount of EV compared to having more sizes. Now, let's say you want more sizes, which is of course fine. At any given node, you can click the pencil on the top right corner of that part of the action history, and you'll see this interface where it says edit node. If I don't like the raise size that Ruse generated for me automatically, I can edit it to something larger, hit confirm, and again, I'm going to see a completely fresh solution, totally recalculated in just a couple of seconds. You can go back to the beginning. You can do this for the big blind. Let's say you didn't mean to give them donk betting. You can just delete all of those, confirm, and everything from there onward will be the same that you left it. And of course, you can do this on future streets as well. Right now, my settings are having it generate just one bet size per street. So this is the one optimal bet size on the turn. And once again, if you're thinking, oh, I didn't want to study the response, let's say you were studying a real hand history and in-game villain bet full pot, and you wanted to know what you're supposed to do against full pot, you can increase that bet size by typing in the size you want, hit confirm, new solution, click the bet size. Now we know the response to that bet size. So once again, all of this is being generated in real time. All of these bet sizes are flexible, and the dynamic engine is recommending to you the best bet sizes to use. Now, if you want to save your trees the way that you like them, perhaps you're not happy with the preflop ranges we've provided, perhaps you're playing a format that we haven't added to the default trees yet, you can create your own library of custom trees. You can see that I have my own heads-up trees, for example, and the heads-up trees that I've created have the preflop ranges that I have generated previously. I've saved these. I've used the dynamic feature in some cases. I've used the fixed bet sizing options in some cases. These are actually the settings that I imported from my course so that I could check to see how the solutions that Ruse generated compared to the ones that POSolver generated when I designed my course. So I gave it all the same settings, and I was extremely happy with the results. I thought the results were very accurate. So this was part of the testing that I did personally to see how much Ruse impressed me, basically. Now, I did mention the other unique thing in this study page, is that from a heads up, you can start from preflop. So I think this is also quite exciting. Now, keep in mind, this is only for heads up format. You cannot solve from preflop for a 2-player scenario within a tournament or within a cash game, because of course this would be a multi-way preflop scenario. This is later on our roadmap. This is not ready yet. But at the moment, what you can do is you can study heads up preflop any stack depth up to 200 big blinds. So I'll start with this one. Again, just making sure you define your sizes. For preflop, you can choose up to 2. What they're calling a bet would be the initial raise. What they're calling a raise would be a 3-bet or greater. You can do separate settings for in position or out of position if you like. You can add limping if you like. But either way, when you set up this tree, you'll see again a fresh solution calculated. Of course, preflop will take a few seconds longer, but here we are. 1 raise size preflop, 1 3-bet size for the out of position player, 1 4-bet size for the in position player, 1 5-bet size. So everything here has been generated according to the settings that I gave. And of course, like I said, if you ever wanted to change those and explore other options, let's say you wanted to see how the solution changes when you add an ante. I've changed nothing about the settings at the moment. I didn't allow limping. We can experiment. We see the raise size increased here. You can see that the starting pot on the right-hand side here is larger than it was before. The raise size has increased. The 3-bet size is slightly different. The 4-bet size has increased. Everything has changed a little bit here. So This is one of the coolest things for me as a heads up player about the study area. You can study short stack heads up, you can study limping, various anti-sizes. All of that is available to you now. And when we launch, there will be a rake setting also that can be adjusted to see how that impacts the preflop solutions. So that should be everything you need to know about setting up a solution in the study area. The next thing I'm going to show you is, actually, before I move on, I will show you just where some of the information is that you might be used to from other platforms. So if I'm looking at, let's say, a heads up single raised pot, I'm not going to bother changing the settings right now, but just looking at the post-flop parameters, the post-flop solution. If I go over to the ranges tab, here I'm seeing all the information about the EV of different parts of the range, the equity bucketing for both players. And if you hover over any of the combos in either player's range, you can see the individual combo information when it comes to EV equity and equity realization. Also, if you go to the breakdown tab, you'll see the strategy broken down by hand strength, and these categories will change depending on what's possible on the board. So of course, if there were straights or flushes possible on the board, then the breakdown page would change to reflect the hands that are possible. The range strategy here details the overall strategy, and the strategy details here are for the individual categories of hands. Also keep in mind when you're on the ranges page, you can interact with different parts of the strategy by clicking on the action that you're interested in seeing the range for, and then that will show you only the hands that are taking that action. And again, you can highlight, you can hover over it, and you can read the frequency information. That's what range means: frequency, EV, equity, and equity realization. Okay, so now I believe you've been introduced to everything on the study page. Let's take a look at training. So on the training page, what I will do is I will load a typical 6 max cash scenario. Let's look actually at under the gun versus button, single raised pot. So if I am looking simply to play a situation and I'm not concerned about filtering and I'm not concerned about the design of the drill, all I have to do is load that spot in the top left corner and hit start game. And I'm immediately going to be dealt in. You can see the position that you're playing from on the button next to your name. You can see the position that Ruse is playing from on the position next to their name. Now, as you play, as you're probably used to in other trainers, you'll receive feedback as you go. This little X number next to me is a streak counter for good decisions. On the right-hand side, you'll see the evaluation populating as you go. And if you're ever curious about the actions that you're taking as you go, you can click on the percentage next to each decision to see the frequency of your particular hand, or you can click on the pie chart to see the strategy of your entire range. You can also go over to the action history and just recap what has happened in the hand that you're playing. But I would spend most of my time in the evaluation here. Now, as you play spots, you might run into a situation, let's say, where you make a mistake. The size of your mistake will be highlighted here. You can see in the question mark hover an explanation for why this is an inaccuracy. And you can always retry the hand if you make a mistake. If you make a large mistake, you'll see it highlighted as such. And if you're ever curious to investigate why the hand was played the way it was played, you'll see the study tab right here in the top left corner. You can click on that and go straight to the spot that you were just training in study mode and navigate in study mode through the different ranges, through the different decision points in that hand. When you want to return to training, use this back arrow here. If you do use the browser's back arrow, I believe you'll lose your progress. But if you hit this back arrow here, you'll just resume training where you were before and you can continue. So I think that should introduce you to the basics of training. Let me show you a few of the settings that I like to play with myself. If you hit this exit button here in the top left, you'll be able to return to the trainer settings page. And in the trainer settings page, we can look at some of the capabilities to customize the training. So first thing you can do, same as in the study page, you can navigate through the action history here, and you can choose the sequence of betting up until the point that you're interested in starting training. So let's say you wanted to look at your delayed strategy as the under the gun player here. After it goes check, check on the flop, you could choose check, check. You can see now that hero has been selected under the gun and ruse has been selected on the button. That is interchangeable if you hover and click, if you want to play just from the button, if you want to play just from under the gun, or if you want to remove it and be randomly placed in either seat. All of those are options. The other settings selection you have here is on the right-hand side. You choose when the drill will end. So by default, you play the entire hand. But if you would like to just play the turn, for example, because I'm starting from the turn, you could choose end of street. If you just want to play one decision point, you could choose end of action. Or of course, you could always go back to playing the full remainder of the hand. The last thing that you can customize here is you can click on the filters. And there are filters for both the types of boards that you're going to be seeing and the types of hands that you're going to be dealt. So something I like to do personally is I like to train without getting dealt strong hands. So I might uncheck the top 6 categories here. I also might uncheck combo draws or top draws in general, and focus just on how am I going to play weak draws, air, and weaker pairs. Of course, alternatively, you could do the opposite, but this is a very common recommendation that I make to my students to improve the efficacy of their training. They don't have to worry about how they're playing their top range. Same with board textures. You could specifically look at boards that are challenging for you. So instead of looking at a variety of paired boards where perhaps you know your strategy quite well, you could only play unpaired boards. Perhaps there's a turn scenario you're looking to practice. So in this case, I went check, check on the flop. Let's say on the turn, I'm only interested in how to play when flushes come in. I could set that filter. Again, I'm playing with weaker hands. Now I could be playing a scenario where I'm in the delay c-bet line. I never get dealt a strong hand and a flush completed on the turn. Now all of those parameters, I see flush turn also. It's good that I made this small mistake with the filters. Flush turn could also mean backdoor flush if I don't specify the flop. So if I go back to those filters, I would also want to specify that it's a 2-tone flop. So 2-tone flop, flush turn. This should be enough for us to get a 3 with a flush turn. There we go. And now we're playing a scenario where we're in the delayed c-bet line. We're going to have weak hands constantly and a flush completed on the turn. So I think that you can see that the filters create a powerful capability to make drills that are very specific to what it is that you need to work on. And of course, if I go back to the trainer settings, all of that I've just done is savable. If you go to the top right, you can save this drill. You can call it delay c-bet, under the gun versus button, flush turn. And you can confirm that. And now in the future, when you go to load drills, you'll see this most recent one that I just created, delay c-bet, under the gun versus button, flush turn. So this whole library of drills is the stuff that I've saved previously. You can see exactly what those drills mean, and you can easily load them and get exactly what you want to do. Once you have built up a little library of drills for yourself, you'll see that training is extremely fast and extremely well customizable. The last few things to introduce you to on this page is just what these icons are and what they will be. Your statistics from training are here. The way that these are tracked and calculated will change over time. It's not a priority for us right now, but we will be adding more specific stats to this page in the future. and all of your past play or current play is being saved so that that information can be updated when we do launch those stats. Here's the history, just previous hands played in the trainer. And of course, if you ever wanted to revisit something that you played previously, you could use that history to get you back there and even click on study and study that spot. So you don't lose your previous hands. They're all saved here. This would be my profile. This last one here is the fair play check. This is our security feature that allows investigation to occur on allegations of cheating using our program. And the way that this works is that if you were playing an online game, or if an online game happened in the past and you were worried that the player was cheating as they played that hand, you could select the situation that you were playing. So let's say, for example, you were playing at some point in the month of February, and you played a King 9-8 rainbow board where you suspected that your opponent was cheating. You can see here time-stamped history of all the lookups on our platform using this board, or a variation on this board if you got the suits slightly wrong. These are the exact matches at the top, and these are the partial matches underneath. So you can cross-check against the exact time that the hand was played. And if it's a match, then of course there's reasonable suspicion that the player you were up against was using Ruse when they played that hand, and you could report that to the poker site on which it was played. The other measures that we have in place for ensuring that RTA is challenging are, well, I'm not going to describe in detail, but the gist of it is that there is an RTA timer, there is a delay built into the software only when the program feels that you're using Ruse in a way that is likely to be cheating. So you won't see that timer if you're just a regular study user, but if you are using the program in certain ways, you might notice that a timer occasionally gets in the way of loading a new spot. And if that's the case, there would be a number right there on screen. If it's just hanging because you've entered a complicated situation, don't worry. It should only take a few seconds. But if you see 20 counting down on your screen, that's just our RTA timer. That's an automatic process that kicks in anytime suspicious activity is detected. So not to worry, that shouldn't be an issue as long as you're using our program in a fair way. So hopefully this was a helpful introduction to Ruse. If you have any questions about the program, feel free to reach out to me. If you want to talk about the potential features that are coming in the future, I'm always happy to talk about that. Battle Ruse is going to be a free play trainer program where you can train by playing against Ruse with no bet size buttons, with no predetermined actions. Everything is like playing on a poker site with a real timer. These will be aggregate reports, so aggregate reports are also coming soon. There's a ton of other features, and if you do go to Ruse AI's homepage, the product page talks about some of those anticipated features here. And you can also read additional things of interest about Ruse and how it works. Previously about how Ruse beat the reigning champion of the ACPC Slumbot by a substantial win rate. All of that information is on our blog here. Hopefully you enjoyed, and good luck.